Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to make this amazing floral cake flavored with lavender and tea. It's so refreshing and delicious. Let's get started. We're going to be sifting all of our dry ingredients into a large bowl. I have 1 2/3 cups of all-purpose flour. So sift it out. Sifting is important because 1, it aerates things, helps you mix things up together more easily, and it prevents any clumps from getting in. 1/4 teaspoon baking soda, a teaspoon of baking powder, 1 cup of granulated sugar, finishing off with a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Now we'll whisk it all together. To 1 cup of simmering milk, I'll add my tea and lavender and just let it simmer for like 10 minutes after you give it a quick stir. The flavors will all seep together and it'll be delicious. Strain your lavender and milk tea into a small bowl and set aside. Into my bowl, 3 egg whites at room temperature, 1/2 cup of sour cream at room temperature, 3 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now let's give it a whisk before we add our next ingredient in. 3/4 cup of unsalted butter at room temperature. Pour the lavender tea mixture into the wet ingredients. Now we're adding our dry ingredients to the wet. It's a really simple recipe. And just mix it in. Okay, we're gonna butter our pans now and then flour them to prep them for the batter. Add in a couple tablespoons of flour and then move it around and tap out any excess. I'm gonna distribute my batter into the 3 pans. Final step before adding these guys into the oven is baking strips. These are just wet fabric strips that I'm gonna add to the edge of the pan, and they're basically gonna slow the cooking down on the outside so it's an even bake, which means a flat top and no burnt edges. They're really like magic. I highly suggest them. Now I'm gonna pop these guys into the oven at 340 degrees Fahrenheit for about half an hour or until the centers are set and the edges are just pulling away from the pan. That's when you know they're ready to pop out. For this cake, I'm making just a simple vanilla buttercream. Really easy, just like 3 or 4 ingredients, and it's a crowd pleaser. 1 pound or about 450 grams of unsalted butter at room temperature, and I'm using a paddle attachment. Now we're gonna mix on low for like maybe 5 minutes or just until it's really creamy and soft. Okay, my butter is really creamy and very silky. Now we're going to sift in 2 pounds of confectioner sugar in 2 batches. So sift in 1 pound, mix, sift in the rest. Now I'm gonna cover this with a tea towel and mix on low for just a couple minutes until the butter is incorporated with the sugar. You can see because only half of the sugar is in here, it's almost a bit soupy. It's not gonna be holding up its shape. And it's time for the rest of the sugar. I'm also adding in a healthy pinch of salt to counteract all of that sweetness. It's a nice balance. Pouring a few tablespoons of my lavender tea mixture into the buttercream to give it a little bit more flavor, and 2 drops of my organic lavender essential oil. I'm using Bloom Pink food coloring to dye my lavender buttercream. When I'm mixing buttercream at this stage, I like to use a spatula and fold so the buttercream doesn't get too aerated. Add your lavender and white buttercreams to separate piping bags, then place both of those into a 3rd piping bag fitted with an 808 attachment. This will let you pipe a beautiful spiral on the inside, which is a nice surprise. I'm using some gel food colorings to dye my Italian meringue buttercream in a gradient from pink to green. Click the link above for the how-to video on how to make Italian meringue buttercream. I'm piping my lavender buttercream onto the first layer of my cake, and I love the spiral that you get from the 2-tone buttercream. Add the 2nd layer on and repeat the process. The 3rd layer on, and now crumb coat the cake with a really thin layer of buttercream. Doesn't matter which color, because you're going to scrape it all off, except for a paper thin layer. After the cake has been smoothed, chill it for about 10 minutes in the fridge so it firms up, and then add your Italian meringue buttercream on in a gradient from pink at the bottom, transitioning to green on top. Use an offset spatula to smooth the top, and a bench scraper to smooth the side. Pulling in as you turn. Clean the spatula off between passes. I added a cone of thick buttercream onto a piece of parchment paper attached to a piping nail, and now I'm using a 127 tip to pipe my rose. It does not look perfect because they'll be in a big wreath and they'll all blend together in a beautiful mass of roses. I'm piping a circle of green buttercream on top of the cake for the base of my wreath. Now I'll add on all the different flowers I piped. You'll finish it off with a bunch of green leaves using a 349 attachment. Alright, so I'll be finishing this piece off camera, but I hope you get to make the recipe because it's really delicious. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe.